Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Too Heavy Wrestling Podcast. Today we have a special edition because we have a special guest, Mr. Joey Galizia. Thank you for taking the
Hey,
time to join us, Joey.
your favorite piece of mozzarella. Thanks for having me, boys. The best wrestling podcast I get to be on. Wow, I'm so honored and thrilled. Thank you. Hello.
Well, we're honored and thrilled to have you, and of course, we're joined by Zach as well. Eddie and Clayton are off busy doing other things in their very busy schedules, but Zach and I will be chatting with you tonight. Um, One of the first things we wanted to talk about was through one of your professions within the wrestling business, you were there. Like you were at the WrestleMania kickoff in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Can you just take us through that day and like what that was like?
Yeah, absolutely. I got my credentials very, very late the day before. I was actually because I was getting ready to take a trip out of town, so I was able to stay, do the conference, and then make my trip afterwards. The atmosphere was insane. The press was right up on top of the stage. The fans were sitting. It was at T-Mobile. WWE loves running T-Mobile. It's where the Knights play.
Mhm.
And like from the moment you got in there, like heavy, like die Rocky die, or like big chants for The Rock. Lots of Cody and Cody sucks chants. Like a very diverse atmosphere for the kind of thing that they were doing. But the point was is that everyone was always making noise. No one was there, and it was not completely sold out. I think it was all
Mhm.
pretty last minute that they announced it, and it was free and open to the public for fans to sit. Um,
Yeah.
but there was also a busy time. They were getting ready for Super Bowl weekend, so I think that's why they probably did it then. They had a lot of press there that was also covering the game on Sunday. ESPN, Bleacher, Sports Illustrated, all the major publications, sporting publications. So yeah, I mean, it was really, really intense. Watching it in person and then hearing how it played out on the broadcast was, kind of unique. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that. I think that that there was a real effort on their part to not only listen and adapt, but try and do something much cooler than they were gonna do originally in the first place. Anyway, you could
Yeah.
tell based on how the reactions were, based on how excited the press was. We were all snapping photos and updating our sites and our socials in the moment while it was happening, and you could sort of feel that moment of there was some confusion. I'm sure you guys probably felt the same way
Yeah.
when they were just. I think Roman came out and he was just like, "I choose The Rock," and I think everyone in the press was like, I don't. That's not the way that's never been the way that works, buddy."
Nope.
Um, yeah, we the ones all you want. Like I think there was a little level of confusion, and then after things played out, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
well, not like the cleanest way to get there, but we got there. And
Yeah.
like most great things in wrestling, it takes some silliness to get there, but we got there. So it was great. I got to connect with a lot of I got to see my buddy SRS from Fightful. I got to see a lot of my
Yeah.
the cool media kids. I got to see a media person that I greatly dislike get turned away.
Ah!
So it was yeah, we
Nice.
were we were the Galizia household was eating good
Mhm.
at the press conference. So those are my just quick initial like reactions and experience going there. It was a lot of fun. It was much more a publicity stunt than a typical like uh scrum that they do post shows now, or that like how AEW does post show now. Like very, very, very few press members actually got to interview talents afterwards, but they all wanted the press to be there for photos and social blasting and all that.
Right. What was it about what you expected? Like what were your expectations going into something like this? Cuz I
I
know they
mean,
don't do them a lot. Like
my
this is
expectation,
pretty
I mean,
new.
I expected it to be not even, I don't want to call it a publicity stunt, but I expected it to be like all storyline driven. I didn't think that Trips was going to go up there, talk about WrestleMania, and then field questions from the media who still really wanted to ask about Vince and and all those allegations. So like, I knew that
Yeah.
they were just, this was pure, like, when they released the WrestleMania 40 special, they want to put this as chapter one, like as the big kickoff to the road going there. Um, so I didn't expect for the storyline to turn out the way that it did. I didn't expect to see Rock go heel. I didn't expect to see the reactions to, the non-bloodline and non-main event stuff get over so much. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
loudest pop of the night was for Rhea. More than Becky, more than Seth. Um, People went nuts when they saw CM Punk. This is
Oh yeah.
prior to the broadcast. He came out. A lot of people chanting. This was off camera before they started. A lot of people chanting for Big E. Um, a lot of random like "We love you, get better." Like,
I was really
just
stoked to see him there. That made me really
yeah.
happy to see him getting involved again.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys read, but like his recovery is still very very grim in a sense of like there's a very good chance he might not ever wrestle again,
Yeah.
and hopefully, fingers crossed, there's a chance that he may have like had some years cut from his life because of the damage that he did sustain to his neck. But right now he's okay, and he does want to get more involved doing stuff like that. So like put this guy on panels. Put him on
Oh yeah.
commentary, like put a microphone in his hand. He's so charismatic. He was so kind. He did field some questions from some randos that were walking by. I'll tell you what, you want to talk about aura? I bumped shoulders and shook hands with Mr. Nick Khan. Oh,
Oh
buddy,
wow.
Daddy Nick
Yeah.
Khan. This man commands, or he walks in, you look at him and you're like, oh, you know where all the bodies are buried because you probably put them there
Yeah.
yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like such a confidence that you could tell just by the way his comb over sat. Like his
Yeah.
hair just wakes up like that, perfect and pristine in the morning.
Well, it
Like
has to.
already gelled, yet somehow soft. Like
Yeah.
so intimidating. Thank God I had a turtleneck on when I met him because I was like, I'm looking good. Because it's the one thing that I dislike about wrestling media people is there are other people wearing suits, but so many of them show up in like a button down that's too big and like shorts that are 10 sizes too big. Like they just,
Yeah.
look like you care. I know this is not like, we're not the White House or we're not covering the NFL, but like maybe try and put a little bit of effort into how you
You
look.
you
You know?
might end up on national TV.
You might end up on national TV. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
it was really I have always been a fan of them going more sports presentation like. It's one of the
Yeah.
things when I got back into wrestling that made me fall in love with like a New Japan because a New Japan was always like very sport broadcast like a sporting event. And you could tell that they've been leaning into that a little bit more and doing stuff like this kind of caters to that niche WWE audience that likes that as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you too, is that with all the different types of media that you've been involved in with wrestling in general,
Sure.
did it feel like we were turning the tide with the TKO presence of like we're finally turning this into more of a sports presentation versus more of just a flat out entertainment, you know?
It certainly felt that way over the last couple of months of programming. The way I'm sure you guys watched Chamber, but a lot of the pre-show
Yeah.
coverage of Chamber reminded me a lot of like the coverage they give to the NFL or any sporting event, like, where, oh, the star has arrived. Let's track them while they're in their workout clothes or tracksuit. They go to the locker room. More match statistics than I remember, like more recently.
Yeah.
I know Michael Cole and Corey Graves have always been like a wealth of knowledge, but even now that Graves has taken over as the head play-by-play man, like the other night on SmackDown, he was talking a lot about like a Bruiser Brody and like historical things, but not just saying like, oh, like this guy is vicious, like referring to it like as a style of fighting similar to how they break down like Krav Maga or guys that are just straight up boxers in UFC. So to answer your question, yes, I do see them leaning more into that. Or I very much felt that with this press conference. Like it does seem that there's kind of they want a new vibe to happen with WWE for good reasons. New is always better, but also to sort of shed itself from the previous chairman, the
Yeah.
previous regime that was there. Shedding it and making it its own thing is probably priority number one right now.
Yeah, and it definitely feels like we're going in the right direction with that. But there's one last question about the press conference, and then I want to talk about what's going on now
Yeah.
with everything we've seen over the last couple weeks. Um, in that room, watching The Rock smack Cody Rhodes, did you hear the smack? Like, how did that sound?
Yeah, it sounded
Because
good. I mean,
he didn't pull that. That was
no.
full rotation.
Cody is a beautifully emotional man. Love watching him when he gets broken up. I have a very strong suspicion. My sources tell me that he held his game face, but when he got out of camera's view, he was just like, "Oh man,
Yeah,
wait,
no way.
why?" Because the man is all granite. Like,
Yeah.
it had been a minute. I don't think I've seen The Rock live and in person since, back when he was still performing during, like, in the 2000s, when he was, where he doesn't look like he ate himself and he's just like so
Yeah.
swole, sort of like
He was
limber.
lean.
Yeah.
He was lean Rock.
Yeah.
He walks out and you're like, that dude is just, he's huge. Like,
That's a
Chiseled.
man.
chiseled. He's beefy,
100%.
and yeah. So to see and hear that, I don't think that it wasn't like the biggest OMG slap I think I've ever heard, but I definitely was surprised.
Yeah.
It doesn't really seem that. It's also conspiracy hats on. I think Dana White asked for that so he could sort of self-promote his slapboxing show.
Yeah, I could see that.
It makes
Well, and
sense.
it's
They're like,
just
right, yeah, right, could
it's
be
just
solid.
because they were standing around in the back before that happened, and they talked about it because Cody was like, "I'll bring up your grandpa," and your grandpa and The Rock was like, "Dude,
Right.
if like, publicly, if you do that, I have to smack you." And
Yeah.
Cody was probably like, "Don't hold back.
Don't
It's
hold
for the
back. Yeah.
business. You got to do
Please
it."
don't. Yeah. Here, I have a question for you guys because while I was, working, sending stuff to our socials, in communication with my boss, I started just checking some socials. It seemed like there was a good amount of people that disliked the bloodline graphic
Yeah.
that they showed. I anticipated that was just going to get nothing but like incredible acclaim, and I saw a lot of people that were like, "Oh, he built up this thing and it's just a poster," and I'm like, I thought the poster looked amazing. I thought it did the job of like actually understanding the legitimacy of what they mean when they say the bloodline. Like, it's no longer just a faction name. Like,
Yeah.
this is one of the lineages in the history of pro wrestling. I thought it landed. I mean, it landed perfectly for me. It seemed like a lot of people, because one of the criticisms was they were like, "Oh, no one made any noise in the arena." I was there. No one made any noise because I think everyone was collectively holding their breaths.
In my opinion,
Mhm.
I think the reason why that fell flat is because for you guys in the arena, you get to look wherever you want and you can
Right.
see it and it's there. If you
Mhm.
go back and watch the broadcast, because I don't know if you've gone back and watched it front to back.
I did. I watched the broadcast, but I didn't watch that section. I kind of like
Yeah.
sort of fast forward to gauge some other things.
If you go back and watch that section, first off, it was so big and expansive that all of the names were really tiny on screen. You
Mhm.
couldn't
Mhm.
actually see or read much of it. And
Okay.
secondly, it was not on screen for very long. They
Okay.
showed it. It was a big reveal, and then it was just the background.
Mhm.
So that was one thing. The second thing was it kind of made people realize that those two, the starting of it, Roman's grandfather and Rock's grandfather, aren't brothers. It was a blood oath,
Mhm.
right? A blood oath of brothers in arms or something like that. So
Right.
a lot of wrestling fans were coming to the realization like, oh, they're not actually cousins.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's like, well, in that culture, they are. Like
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. And so a lot of people
Family
were
is.
taking
Yeah.
exception. A lot of people were finding out and taking exception to the fact that they weren't, that even though they are calling themselves brothers and down the family lines they're calling each other cousins, they don't share parents.
Mhm.
Like I think
Interesting.
that a lot of people online were taking exception to that as well.
I
And
think
that's fun. Yeah.
in my general opinion, like when people have seen the bloodline, they have seen 6 total members. And then when you bring up a graphic like that has almost 50 plus people on there that they really have not talked about virtually at all throughout
Mhm.
any of the
Mhm.
bloodline storyline, it's kind of like a culture shock, you know. I think people who are very much into the history of wrestling understand how big this family is and what they actually, and like Randy said, a lot of I would say more of the casual fan would be like, oh, they're not really cousins, just like Kane and
Yeah.
Undertaker, oh, they're not really brothers,
Yeah,
Um,
like that's what it was. It was people were realizing that it was a kayfabe family, if you will. And it's
Mhm.
like, well, I don't necessarily think that's the case because I don't think knowing I mean, I don't know a ton, right? I'm not in the Samoan culture, but I do know that like blood oaths are real for them. Like
Yeah,
that
of course.
um within
if they
that
say they're family, they're family. Like it's not.
yeah, especially if they go through and do a real like blood oath, like that means just as much to them as us sharing parents. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
But like
Family
I
is
said,
So
I
family,
think it
blood is
was just
blood.
a culture like appropriation. Like it's just we've seen Roman, Jimmy and Jay, Solo,
Mhm.
and then we've had people who were not even in the family in the bloodline, and
Mhm.
they haven't even really brought up Rikishi very much, knowing that it's Jimmy and Jay's dad and Solo's
Right.
dad.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I mean it's one of those things that there wasn't enough of the family brought up until then to just splash 50 people on the screen and be like, oh, look at this family.
Mhm. Mhm.
But you've only
Mhm.
yeah.
shown us this many. Like they've talked about the elders, they've talked about having Roman's dad on TV. They've talked about having Rikishi on TV as like an elder
Mhm.
type feel between matches, but those fell through because people got sick. So like
Mhm.
I
Yeah, a
think
lot
it
of that
was
was
just
during the Thunderdome era.
yeah, if
Mhm.
things were a little bit different, it didn't have to be a lot different, but if you shown a little bit more of the family on TV, I think it would have smacked a little bit more.
It's a little bit harder, and that's legitimate. I was just asking out of curiosity, just because I didn't really. I think I was just more surprised. I thought, uh,
Yeah.
at,
I
at
thought it
least
was
from the
cool.
yeah, I'm interesting. I thought for at least from the WWE, the core WWE fans, the Bloodline has been it. Based on the reactions that they still continue to get, it's really going to beg the question once this era of them is over, is like how important was this faction? You
Yeah.
know, so we'll just have to wait and see. I
Yep.
mean,
Well,
is
it also begs the question: it does the bloodline remain a mainstay throughout WWE's history over the next 30, 40 years as the next generations of this family come up? Because we've already seen The Rock's daughter,
Mhm,
in NXT, and now she's general manager, and who knows if
mhm,
she's going to pivot back into wrestling. But
mhm,
ultimately, we're already seeing that next generation come of age
mhm.
to be in there, and especially because Solo you could argue Solo would be the head of the table of that generation based off of what
Yeah,
he's doing now because we're Solo's got what 20 more years or something like that, like
he's
he's
very
got
young. He's very
yeah, he's
young. Yeah.
very young. So by 5 years from now when Roman, Roman won't be too old to be doing this, but he might hang up the full-time aspect and start exploring Hollywood or other things. You see you see Solo become the head of the table. I feel like that's a natural progression. What
Yeah.
level of family bloodline comes up with him?
Well,
Mhm.
that's what I was gonna say
Tamatonga and
because we it just depends on the actions of those family members outside of WWE to if they get pulled into WWE because we've seen that with Zilla Fatu.
Mhm.
yeah,
We've seen
Mhm.
that with Jacob Fatu, Tamatanga, like there's plenty of members of the family, per se, that are in the wrestling business actively that are young enough that could, form the next generation of the bloodline if they were to all come in at the same time. Like it would be a perfect if the stars aligned moment, you know. Um but I do agree with you that if that was the case that Solo would be that forefront.
Not only be the forefront. I mean, he's clearly. I mean, he was getting big reactions in the ring with Roman and The Rock this past week. I
yeah,
mean, like this guy is. At one point he will have the rocket strapped to him. You could tell, and his work is already pretty like solid. He doesn't seem like
yeah,
he's getting. I don't think there's ever going to be that case of like the failed Roman era like post Shield where it was
no,
like sort of trying to make this thing very hard to work, and it just clearly wasn't. That journey sort of led to what we have today, so it wasn't all for nothing. But I really like this idea of this bloodline becoming like the WWE's sort of Bullet Club, like this legacy thing that just keeps going on, and is going to be the thing that sort of really catapults superstars now. I
yeah,
mean, I think you could argue that like what they have done with Jey Uso since this whole thing started is incredible. I never foresaw the Uso brothers being anything other than just a top tag team. To see now both of them getting pretty consistent singles pushes and people really being into it is, like hats off to you. Like that was a gutsy, uh, like
It's all
bet,
you can ask
and it
for.
paid off. Yeah, it really is.
Well, and it's funny because as we start to go through like the next generations of bloodlines, like we're pretty well ingrained with this one now, and we're gonna have this version. I 3 or 4 years ago, 2020, when the bloodline first started, and like it was going through its motions, and we were even already seeing the Jay versus Roman, like getting people in line. If you had asked me at that time if I thought for the next 3 or 4 years straight this is going to be the main event storyline, I would have thought you were crazy. Not because I thought the storyline was bad at the time, but because at the time I didn't think that kind of storyline could exist. I didn't think we could have long-term storytelling within WWE. But here we are, and
Yeah.
it's been good the whole time. It's made sense the whole time. Like I've been very impressed with it at this point.
I will, and I know we talked about this the last time I was on when we talked about, the ending of Mania 39 and how even though we have this great storytelling here, like I still really disagreed with that decision.
Yeah.
I do I think the Sami Zayn element to the bloodline really injected a lot of life into it at a point where it just
Yeah.
seemed like it was getting a little stale. And I mean, that was still during like the Vince era of running the bloodline, where, as you said, the long-term storytelling effect wasn't really as cemented in the way he liked to do things. Like Roman probably still would have been champion this whole time under Vince, but Vince changes his mind so often, and like on little things like that. And it just seems that Levesque is a much more patient person and really is giving things time to play out. And I think he earned a lot of grace doing that. If you saw like the work of his booking in NXT and the way he would like slow book things there, sometimes to his own detriment, because the man loves a heel champion and will keep the belt on a heel champion for the chase. He loves the chase. And that's all to say that I think that it has been good all this time. There are parts of the bloodline that I wish that like memories and storylines that I do wish to forget. It doesn't matter because now we're cooking.
Well, and that's where
we're
like
smelling what they're cooking.
If like 2023 was such a domino effect of just massive things happening to the company. And like you said, there's probably no doubt that Vince would probably have kept Roman as champion, throughout 2023. But, just with him leaving, the company being sold, TKO coming in, now The Rock's part of the board, like there's just so many dominoes that are being fallen. That's why they're building this WrestleMania, injuries plaguing enough, they're building this WrestleMania to still be the biggest one ever, which they usually do for every year, but this one does have that sense of feeling different. Like the prominence of a lot of the storylines just have that much more big story feel than we've been used to in stories past, and they're bringing real life elements into it now too, and we're about to go into that with what had been going on. So I'll leave my comments for it, but it's just, there's so much of a different feel. It's like, I believe we are back into the best era of wrestling.
Yeah, and The Rock keeps saying that. And because he posted a 20-minute promo on Twitter, right? Which was insane. And then he comes out
gold.
and so I was rewatching the Bloodline segment from SmackDown in preparation for this episode. And that by itself was 31 minutes on YouTube without the commercial breaks.
It ran
so
over
that took
10 minutes, by the way.
Yeah, it was well over a quarter of SmackDown last night.
It was a 10 minutes just to get Roman in the ring. I remembered because I went to go use the restroom and came out, had picked up dinner from the door, sat down. I still hear the high orchestral music, and I'm like, is this?
Yeah.
Is he
still coming?
Still walking to the ring?
they're in Arizona. Our venue's not that big.
And then they used
like,
the commercial break just for the Rock's entrance to happen too.
Yeah,
Yes,
which was hilarious because
Like, you can't leave the ring.
someone
Hold on. The Rock
someone
is
at
coming.
some point, yeah, someone at some point had to tug on Paul's like legs or whatever and be like, "Hey, we're gonna cut to commercial before the Rock comes out because you guys are over." But so at this point, where we're at the current storyline, we're still leading up to WrestleMania 40. Cody wins the Royal Rumble, but gives up his main event, takes it back at the press conference we just talked about, and has now challenged The Rock to a one-on-one match on this last Monday Night Raw. And we get a response from The Rock that I feel like
It was a
kind of like
complete
what you talked
retcon.
about. Yeah, well, kind of like what you talked about earlier. I didn't expect this to be how we got to the outcome, but we got there, and that's what's important. And that's The Rock and Roman counter offering this one-on-one match for the tag match that I think everyone saw coming the second Rock was getting booed. Which is you put Cody back into the main event with Roman. You do Cody Roman night 2, and the amount of people that was calling for Rock Roman versus Cody Seth night 1, it's starting to look like that's what we're going to get now at this point. Is that was the big counter offer.
The challenge was made. I personally, I don't think even after the press conference, even after that moment happened, I didn't envision that being a thing. I didn't think that Seth was going to be involved at all. I'm so happy that they did, because if there was one thing that I didn't mention at the press conference about my press conference experience was, didn't seem like they gave much to Seth. You know, they made his belt not feel very important. And it's not like, oh, they're like tanking the guy on purpose. I'm not saying that at all.
No, it's just hard to make it actually look that way now.
Yeah, and now using him and it being like him being personally offended, it does all make sense. I just have to ask you guys while we're talking about this, is this not, even though it's messy how we got there, so much better than just having generic Dwayne come back, cut his same generic babyface promo, have his match with Roman? Like, I was one of those people that was, I don't want to say offended, but was really disappointed in the fact that I was like, they've spent so long on this Cody Rhodes project, and it's working even despite, again, my disagreements with the ending of Mania 39. It's working, and this is so clearly the guy. If you look at the numbers across the board, everywhere, merch, house show attendance, viewer, his segments, his quarter hours, everything, this is the guy. Like, business-wise, it makes sense. The people love him. Like, to track that just to bring back Rock, who is going to do his same basic shtick, and then say this was the story all along, you could not convince me of that happening. And I'm so happy, because now we have a Rock that's creative again. We have a Rock that's fighting against the current rather than just riding with it. And we actually have a Rock that's out to prove something. You know, Dwayne's not had the best like road to success the last couple of years. You know, he took the Black Adam failure on the chin. He took whatever's going on with the XFL and the USFL on the chin. I think he's ready to like make a statement and like remind everyone, not even just wrestling fans, but Hollywood. He's like, that I'm the guy. Like, I've always been him, and now I think he's going to get a chance to do that again. And it's so much more entertaining.
Well, the thing is, I think the word that we're looking for is now The Rock cares again.
Yeah.
And not to say that he didn't necessarily care when he would come out and, you know, embarrass Baron Corbin and do whatever shtick with the man, Becky Lynch and all that, but he cares to a degree that he changed his appearance, right? He's not coming out in the sleeveless shirts anymore. He's actually using some old heel shtick. He's using some of his old insults from the Attitude Era back in the day. He's week after week. Like, he was announced for last night. He's also announced for the next 2 weeks. So that's 3 appearances in a row. Like we're getting a version. I don't even know if he did 3 weekly consecutive appearances during his Punk, during his Punk program.
Or his Cena program.
Exactly. So at this point, I think it's a Rock cares type situation.
And I would agree with that too. I just look at it this way, and to everyone's point, like, The Rock's using it as a point to call everybody Cody crybabies, but like, if you come out on a sports broadcast saying that the plan was for you and Roman to come out at WrestleMania 39, I would have rather have you guys done that to not have 2 years wasted on Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So, like, and to your guys' point too, like the fact that we're not getting a stamp version of The Rock, like it's literally, here he is again. Yes, again, he's a part of the TKO board, so technically he can do what he wants, and he could have went through the rest of his whatever he had left of his WWE career and doing the same thing every time he came out. But the only thing that I'm waiting for, and Randy's going to hate me for saying it, is the Hollywood Rock theme. I need that to be back.
Here's the thing. I don't hate that you're saying it because other people have been saying it, but you said it well before a lot of people online were saying it, and what I can't stand is the big head and the braggadociousness I'm going to get from you when he starts using it. The I told you so's. I don't need it.
But overall, I didn't come into the after press conference thinking that Seth was going to pull double duty. I'm probably more surprised on that, considering the injury plaguing of this WrestleMania. And like I said, we might go into this a little bit more, but like the stipulation that was made for this tag match, whether the one team wins or loses, I have my thoughts on that, which I do believe that I think Rock and Roman will win. Night
easy.
one.
It'll be wild if they do for whatever the stipulation is around. It's now a bloodline match, whatever the hell they want.
Well, and that's my thing. So, like, the branches that are on this storyline now, like, a lot of people say, oh, The Rock's going to turn on Roman now because of what he did on SmackDown. He stopped him from doing his shtick.
Oh, made him acknowledge him.
Right. But then you have the other side of things where The Rock is toying with Seth Rollins. Will Seth Rollins turn on Cody?
I don't see that. I've seen people talk about that, and that just doesn't make sense to me. And it's not that it doesn't make sense from a storyline perspective, because yes, like Cody and Seth, the trilogy and this and that and the other, like from like on its surface, yes, there's a little bit of a nugget there that can make it make sense. But ultimately, it would be dumb of Seth to insert himself into this program and put his World Heavyweight Championship in jeopardy, because he still has to face Drew McIntyre.
Right.
It would be really dumb for the architect, the smart guy, to pull double duty and make it harder himself to defend his actual title just to screw over someone who's trying to do something else entirely.
Also, you don't.
Bigger, bigger.
Well,
it just doesn't make sense to me.
I was also going to say that's not that it's the most wild out of this idea thing that could happen, but I don't think you want Seth going in with heat against a guy on night 2 who has built up a lot of heat because of like a real life injury that they are now using to give him a massive sort of heel push in a way that no one could have benefited more from the Punk injury than McIntyre.
Well,
not only that he just got hurt, but that like he was literally the one that the spot happened with. So like sort of not taking that heat away, but I don't think people are trying to go. I don't think fans will probably cheer Drew regardless when he wins on night 1. But I think he's holding that title until Punk comes back, because that program is like the other big thing that I think people have been talking about, because they know it's coming and they've already planted seeds for it to come and for it to happen. It also kind of gives Seth a really, really, really good out in a sense of he worked double duty. He, that match is probably going to be, brutal in a sense of
It'll probably go 20 or 30.
20 or 30 minutes, they'll all be fatigued going into night 2. I don't know how barbaric it'll get, but by WWE standards, it'll probably be a little bit barbaric. And he's going to go in facing Drew, probably not at 100%, which makes him look, even when you lose, he'll look pretty good in defeat.
Well,
the thing is,
that's why I was looking at it from a order perspective, so like playing devil's advocate, if they say The Rock and Roman does win night 1, and so they go into night 2 with both championship matches where Seth loses, of course, but he's gonna be on before the Rock and or the Roman and Cody match. So that's where I was like, oh, well then maybe during that match, Seth's frustrated. He just lost both of his matches of WrestleMania,
Right.
and then you go into that. That would be the only way I seen Seth turning, in any situation like that.
You do bring up a good point. You do bring up a good point. Is that they should at some point make that, because right now that stipulation only affects the Cody and Roman match, and I think Seth has to have some stake in it. Whether that's Cody being like, "Hey man, like I really need you," maybe he offers him a unification match, like, or something at some point, or he's like, "Hey, we really need to win this." That also drives a wedge into their potential feud when it happens again down the line. It's nice because there's a lot of ways. They have a lot of options. They do have a lot of options. I
It's
don't think
weird that
like
it feels predictable, but also not predictable at the same time.
It's predictable to multiple outcomes. It's predictable to here, and here. You just don't know which one.
Right.
I mean, and even with Roman and Rock winning, who's not to say that Roman and Rock don't have their own sort of disagreement that sort of drives the eventual wedge. I've seen people predict, does Solo and Jimmy like beat down Roman and stand with The Rock after night 2? Like,
well, so that's where I was going to say the other side of the match stipulation. Cody and Seth win night 1, but it's due to the turning of The Rock on Roman, and he has now taken Jimmy and Solo away from The Rock, or from Roman going into night 2.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's where, like, technically the stipulation is that they're barred anyway, but like this would give the story perspective even further between The Rock and Roman, coming out of it.
Let me take you on a trip real quick.
Yeah.
Cody and Seth lose night 1, right? So you have Cody and The Rock win, right? So you are set up with this expectation that, like, okay, all the odds are stacked against Cody. It's a bloodline rules match. They're going to put some sort of weird stipulation, and the wording is going to be something along the lines of only a member of the bloodline can referee this match. And then we're going to get about 80% of the way through this match, and Jimmy is going to be the ref, and Solo's going to be ringing the bell or whatever. Rock's going to be in the back. He's not really going to be too involved or something. Seth comes out, takes care of Solo, and Jimmy, the referee, gets knocked out, and Cody hits the crossroads, and we're waiting for Jimmy to wake up, and then Jey Uso comes out. Counts this 1, 2, 3.
Goosebumps.
Jey Uso comes out, counts this 1, 2, 3 while looking Roman in the eyes, and lifts up Cody's arm. Roman ultimately knowing his bloodline was the reason why he lost.
He's cooking, baby. He's cooking.
I'm saying,
He's
like,
cooking.
tell me that's not on a whiteboard somewhere in Connecticut right now.
Oh boy, my laptop's on fire. Listening to him cook. That's how it happens. Okay, this is where great ideas happen. I feel like we all just did a line of Adderall. Like what we got.
That. You know what? If we're lucky, that's canon. That's canon at this point. That's what's gonna happen. But speaking of what's gonna happen, just let's get one final thought to take us home. So Joey, we talked about it last year. Right. Cody should have won that match.
Yeah,
we agree on that. You and I, Zach. Where do you stand on that?
I mean, you see my reaction last year.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. Let's ask the big question. Joey, all bloodline storyline aside, everything leading up to it, and just the title record or not, for you as a fan and as a journalist of the wrestling business, Joey, what happens if Roman wins this year and keeps the title out of Mania? What happens if Cody takes back-to-back losses?
Nothing will change business-wise. I think I would be confused as someone that, as someone that's in the performance industry myself, and as someone that has loved and followed wrestling storylines and now covers it for a living, because that story doesn't make sense to me. I understand that the story in WWE never ends. I get that. I hate when Hunter or anyone ever says that, because there are times for moments.
Yeah.
Moments are what have made this thing fun to watch. People always remember those moments. You know,
Yeah.
prior to even us coming on, you were like, we were talking about Edge and Hardy and TLC. That spear, that's a moment.
Yeah.
Like, these are moments. It would be absolutely asinine to take this moment and delay it for Cody again, because there would be no better payoff. Honestly, all of this bloodline stuff has been great. You still can't convince me that Sammy and Kevin getting their revenge on Roman, getting involved in the match last year, setting up for Cody to win wasn't better. Like, in my mind, what they were telling that story with Sammy, that's part of the reason that I was so sour, is like, they had that there. They had that there. Now, granted, we've gotten some great things. We got the Bloodline Civil War. We got Jimmy being the first man to beat Roman. These are also great moments.
Yeah.
If Roman wins again this year, clearly they want him to break Hogan's record and maybe even come close to Bruno's record. Kudos to them for that. That's like a 6 to 7 year plan.
Yeah.
Starting in 2020. I will say kudos to them for just even thinking that far ahead. Do I think it happens? No. Am I afraid it's going to happen? Very much. Now that you put it in my
Yeah.
head, if there's one thing that's for sure, the bloodline is like Sting. If there's one thing that's for sure, nothing's for sure.
Exactly.
What I do know is that Cody's going to go for the crossroads. Solo's going to pop up, hit that Samoan spike just like last year. Roman's going to hit that spear. And I know that kick out at 2.9 is going to hit like
Yeah.
crank.
Oh
But
my
I'm
God.
still not 100
Goosebumps.
still not 100% sure that he kicks out either, because
Yeah.
they redid that spot with Cody and Drew 2 weeks ago. Solo
Yeah.
hits the
In
spike.
the
Drew hits
corner.
his finisher. So that's my thought on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Before I stop talking, though, I've always been a Roman Reigns fan. When I came back to wrestling, I thought I like this guy. I thought, obviously, I'm not saying anything new, that his performance since 2020 with this whole tribal chief thing has been excellent. This past Friday SmackDown was the first time I said this guy can go off and be a big star in Hollywood.
Yeah.
100%. The way he delivers, acknowledge me to the rock. Like, you could almost feel like he wants to break down and cry, but he knows that this is more important to him than even holding the title, is for this guy to say, I acknowledge you as the head of this table and as my tribal chief. That was, I mean, Brett, like, I always refer to, people like talking about wrestling and cinema.
Yeah.
I would think it's a stupid comparison. Wrestling, by its pure definition, as beautiful and brilliant as it is not cinema. It's just
Yeah.
you have to be able to indulge in stupid silliness to enjoy what this thing is. That was one of those moments that really, like, I actively needed to move from my spot. Like, I was physically gyrating because I felt that. I
Yeah.
felt that. Like, that was a feeling, and you know, that was the moment where I was like, dude, this guy, he can go off. He can go be in movies with A24. He can go be in James Gunn's DC's series now. He can go anything he wants to do, he could do. I really believe that. I really believe that.
Yeah. I think so too. Zach, what about you?
So
Cody loses. Roman wins. Takes the title past WrestleMania 40. What happens?
it's one of those things that, like, with wrestling, to me, I don't get to, or I don't watch as many movies anymore as I used to, but wrestling is my movie. Like, it's my it's continuous entertainment. It's what I look forward to on a weekly basis. It's taken a part of my life. We're in a fantasy wrestling league. We do a podcast about wrestling, and it takes up about 10 hours of our week.
Yeah, minimum.
But
Minimum.
there's a point in time where we said this last year. We didn't think Roman was winning. And it's only because the way the modern era has become, we didn't see a 3+ year champion. It just
Yeah.
wasn't in the books anymore. Like
Mhm.
that hasn't been a thing since the 80s. So that's where, the fear is there. If it does happen, I mean, I can honestly just tell myself I'm not taking it off the table. I mean,
Mhm.
will I
Mhm.
be happy about it? Probably not. To me, that will be the ultimate slap to Cody in the face
I think so too.
from leaving WWE, making his name to come back and have this story for 3 years. And I hate saying story because like this
Mhm.
whole finish the
Mhm.
story moniker is starting to get annoying. But in this case with Cody, it would feel like a complete waste. Like there's no sugarcoating it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
I don't feel like Cody would have a direction anymore. His win after a loss twice at 2 WrestleManias would not feel the same.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
what, are we going to wait until 41?
Mhm.
And so we get 3 years of the same story to finally get his win? No. I can't do that. And
Well,
his story is with Roman at this point, and they've made that a point. If it was just for the WWE title, there would be a different champion by now, and he could be going after it right now. But it has to end here. If it does not, then Cody should not be with WWE anymore.
And just to add on to what you were saying, because the finish the story moniker has been pounded since the Raw after Mania 38 when he came back. Not saying that I'm getting sick of it, but like if I don't hear it in a day, like I guess I sleep a little bit better.
yeah.
I'm ready, and I've always been one of those guys. I love long term stories. Yes, I am ready to see what happens to Cody next. Like this is the part that sort of drives my curiosity. This post, I've accomplished the thing that I wanted to accomplish, and I won the title that my father never did. Now, what are you going to do about it? Like,
Yeah.
you can't, because that's where you really, he's already a superstar, but will you be this iconic figure in wrestling forever? Like, a lot of post that is going to determine that. It really is. And I have great faith that Cody has ideas and that they have ideas for what to do with him. And we're not just going to get like a generic title run. But I do hope that it's not the only thing that defines Cody was this portion. And then he just becomes like the other guy.
And that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I mean, in terms of where we go after Cody wins, it's not even just Cody's next chapter. It's the company's next chapter. Again, like I just said, we didn't ever think we'd be in another era of a 3-year plus champion. So that next era of finally getting someone who's one on TV more often, 2 fresh champion, and 3 someone who has never even held the belt before. Like there's so many layers to that at that point, and that's what I'm excited about. But that's if they get there. And again, that sliver of fear will haunt me until Cody is holding up that championship that night.
Randy, Roman wins. What happens?
So here's the thing about if Roman wins, right? Because you can't run it back. You can't copy and paste again. So what I mean by that is ultimately, if Roman wins at WrestleMania 40, and this is probably what I said last year, but I mean it this time. Cody will beat Roman at WrestleMania 41 for that title because Roman will still have it. If Cody does not beat Roman, it's because they want him to break Hogan's record, which will take him past SummerSlam. If he's going past SummerSlam, you're already less than half a year, or no, you're not less than half a year, but you're only about a half a year away from the next Mania anyway.
Right.
Especially because you could use the excuse of Survivor Series for a title versus title non-title match for like bragging rights or whatever, him versus Seth or whoever the world heavyweight champion is. You have outs between now and then. So it's interesting to see. What I would be interested in seeing rather is how Cody gets to Roman at Mania without a Rumble win, because he's not going to win the Rumble for a third time. That's not happening. So the first big decision you have to make is next year's Rumble winner goes after the World Heavyweight Championship, not Roman. You could make that a fear thing You could make that a whoever the world heavyweight champion is, they were already feuding thing, whatever. But it's not going to be Cody.
Mhm.
So Cody has to win the Elimination Chamber next year
Mhm.
in order to get to Roman if they're going to run that same story that they did this year where the chamber winner gets a title shot. Yes, Zach?
I was gonna make you mad and say that he loses at Mania, wins Money in the Bank, and instantly cashes in for next year's WrestleMania.
Dude, but that's the thing. That's what I was saying earlier. You have this, and this. You just don't know which one. He could totally be a Money in the Bank winner instead, but he's not going to win the Rumble. If he's either going to win the Chamber or Roman defends the title in the Chamber because management's just tired of him winning and he pulls out anyway, and somehow Cody gets back. That's what I would be interested in seeing, is how do you get Cody back into this main event for the third year with Roman? So that's what happens with Roman and Cody. What happens with the rest of the roster, literally everyone else, and maybe a small but growing portion of the fans, is this resentment towards this storyline, because you've now monopolized 3 consecutive night 2 main events with just this one match, while you have the most in-depth roster we've seen WWE have in years, not being able to fight for that spot purely for this story. Now, 2 WrestleManias in a row, some would argue that's still a lot, but at this point, it's made sense. They wrote a good enough, cohesive enough story, introduced a new world title for people to fight. You have a night 1 main event, which is now being monopolized by that same match. So you could even see that resentment start to grow this year. But like, it's gonna become a thing if that has to be the main event of next year. Now, the other side to that coin is that could be the main event of next year, except Roman is challenging Cody this time. We go for his rematch, right? Because at this point, you're gonna have Roman wins the first one, Cody wins the second one. You're gonna have your trilogy. You're gonna have your rubber match. Does Roman take the same path and get another Rumble win? Does he go through the chamber? Like, what does that look like? Ultimately, the fans will be much more accepting of Cody Roman 3 if Cody's going into it as champion.
100%. I mean, if you're trying to build to a legitimate who's going to win rubber match, the rubber match has to be each having a win.
It's not going to be a rubber match.
Roman feud.
Well, I compare it more ironically enough to Austin and Rock. Those weren't that trilogy wasn't consecutive the way that this one is, which honestly talks about what the long-term storytelling of that time period was. But at the end of the day, like, it's not a rubber match if Roman wins match 1 and 2.
Yeah, no, it's not.
It's not that. So
there's already a level of, the thing that I argued about when Roman won last year was that there was already a level of, for the first time, and not for the first time, but there was a main event where I think there was a pretty legit 50-50 split. No one was certain.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite sort of booking patterns in all of pro wrestling, when you're going into like a heated big match and you really don't know who's going to come out of it. Like, I think people predicted Cody and were still surprised. But like, I don't think I had complete and utter doubt that Roman couldn't win that match. Now, going in this year, like, it's like 90-10 for me. Like, there really is still, as we've already talked about, a sliver that Roman could do it. But what purpose does that really serve in terms of the story that is being told? And predictability is never a bad thing, but sometimes it could be a bad thing when you had something that was so, again, a chance to make a moment. People will remember and have talked about that Mania 39 ending all year because it left them heartbroken, and that's like, okay, like that's a choice, and that happens sometimes, and sometimes that's how we tell stories. I think again, Cody Rhodes is a very unique performer. I think it was very smart instantly feuding him with Lesnar. There was a lot of holdover period where he really wasn't doing much. Shinsuke Nakamura is one of my favorite wrestlers. Those guys wrestled so many times. I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening here, but like we need to start getting back to the thing.
Yeah, we need to move on from this.
We need to move on. Like wrestling, it's hard. It's a 52-year. You have to do 52 shows or 104 shows a year with between Raw and SmackDown. Like I understand you have to have these filler feuds, but it doesn't make sense. Like that feud did nothing for Cody. Like that was just stagnant. Again, he's the guy, so it didn't matter. It's a testament to how much he is the guy.
Yeah.
I don't think we could endure another 52 weeks of, all right, well, he's going to do something else for 30, 40 plus weeks before he gets back to Roman. At that point, people are just going to be irritated.
Yeah.
Like,
it doesn't need to go that way. So I really hope we don't have to experience that, though. I really hope by the end of WrestleMania 40 and at the beginning of the Raw after, or I guess the SmackDown after, wherever he does it, we see Cody holding that belt.
Oh.
And hopefully he turns it back to the Winged Eagle, but I digress.
That would be dope. That's this belt right here. I really hope we get that rendition of that belt. But Joey, I want to thank you for taking the time to hang out with us and talk to us, talk some wrestling. It's always a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm sure depending on what the outcome of WrestleMania 40 is, we will use this platform again so you can voice more celebration, more concern.
I'm very much looking to spring 2025 when we're like, all right, guys, Roman's got to lose it this year.
Yeah, exactly. This has to be the year. But Joey, go ahead. If there's any projects or upcoming things that you're working on or want to promote, feel free to take this time to talk about it a little bit if you want.
I appreciate it, boys. I always love coming on the Not Too Heavy show. This is the best wrestling podcast that exists. Keep an eye out for my work over at WrestlingHeadlines.com, where I'm doing interviews and keeping everyone that likes that site updated on all the happenings of pro wrestling across WWE, TNA, AEW, New Japan, and all other forms of wrestling content and indies. And just keep an eye out. There's good content being made by Zach and Randy here, and I look forward to the next time I get to come on.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joey. Zach, do you want to run us through the socials Eddie style real quick?
We got,
if you can,
Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and Podbean, TikTok.
Beans.
I don't know.
So
that's not my shtick.
Yeah, he'll post a link. We'll get there. But Zach, thanks for coming on. Joey, thank you for guest starring in this episode again. And of course, you guys, let us know in the comments what you think is going to be going on with the Bloodline, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns. Thank you for watching, and we will see you soon.